The underground facility at S4 hummed with an energy that defied conventional physics, its sterile corridors carved deep into the Nevada mountainside adjacent to the infamous Area 51. Bob Lazar adjusted his security badge as he walked alongside his colleague Barry toward the hangar that housed something beyond human comprehension. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on the concrete walls, but nothing could have prepared him for what waited behind the heavy steel doors marked with classifications he had never seen before. Inside the cavernous hangar sat a craft that challenged every law of thermodynamics Lazar had learned during his academic pursuits. The vessel, roughly 52 feet in diameter, according to later calculations with John Andrews from the Tester Model Corporation, possessed a dark pewter coloration that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No right angles existed anywhere on its surface. Everything appeared as if someone had taken a wax model and heated it just enough to melt the edges, creating smooth, flowing curves where components met. This wasn't human engineering. This was something crafted by intelligence that operated under entirely different principles. The reactor at the heart of this otherworldly machine represented the most revolutionary aspect of the entire operation. Positioned at the dead center of the craft's main level, it operated on element 115, a super heavy element that wouldn't appear on Earth's periodic table until 2004, when scientists in Darmstadt, Germany would successfully synthesize 4 atoms that lasted a mere 220 milliseconds before decaying. But the fuel in this reactor was different: stable, non-radioactive, and capable of generating enormous amounts of energy without producing any waste heat whatsoever. This violated the first law of thermodynamics in ways that made Lazar question everything he thought he understood about physics. Every machine, every device that operated on Earth produced excess heat as waste energy. It was an immutable law that nothing worked at 100% efficiency. Yet infrared cameras, requiring liquid nitrogen cooling to function properly in those days, showed no temperature increase from the reactor regardless of the load placed upon it. The element 115 fuel, somehow acquired along with the craft itself, represented a stable isotope that Earth's scientists couldn't even theorize, let alone create. The reactor's operation centered on what appeared to be a small particle accelerator built into the square base of the craft. This cyclotron-like device, much more compact than the linear accelerators Lazar was familiar with, used high voltage and radio frequencies to accelerate particles in a circular pattern rather than the straight-line approach of conventional accelerators. The element 115 underwent some form of transformation within this system, though the exact process remained beyond their understanding despite months of careful study and testing. What they could determine through painstaking analysis was that the reactor produced what could only be described as gravity waves. These emanated from the center of the craft through a waveguide that extended upward to a small appendage protruding from the top of the vessel. The waves created a heart-shaped gravitational distortion around the entire craft, bending space-time itself in ways that made traditional concepts of propulsion obsolete. Light bent around the field, radio waves curved impossibly through space, and the very fabric of reality warped in response to the reactor's output. 3 gravity amplifiers, positioned equidistantly around the reactor on the craft's lower level, hung like metallic cylindrical containers from support structures that resembled pipes. These devices, roughly the size and shape of large trash cans, somehow amplified and directed the gravitational waves produced by the central reactor. The amplifiers could focus the craft's gravitational field, creating directed distortions that allowed for impossible maneuvers and instantaneous changes in direction that would pulverize any human pilot under normal circumstances. The fuel itself posed questions that challenged everything known about nuclear physics. While Earth-synthesized element 115 proved highly radioactive and decayed within milliseconds, the extraterrestrial version remained stable indefinitely. This suggested isotopes with neutron configurations that human science couldn't achieve, possibly requiring the extreme gravitational conditions found in the cores of neutron stars or other exotic stellar environments, where super-heavy elements could form naturally and maintain stability. Dennis Mariani, their military-looking supervisor, would routinely check on their progress, but the compartmentalized nature of the operation meant that Lazar and Barry could only work within their designated area. They couldn't collaborate with other teams or access broader research data that might have accelerated their understanding. This security protocol, while protecting classified information, also stifled the scientific process that depends on free exchange of ideas and collaborative problem-solving. The implications of a stable element 115 reactor extended far beyond simple propulsion. Such technology could revolutionize energy production on Earth, providing clean, unlimited power without the radioactive waste associated with conventional nuclear reactors. The reactor's ability to operate without heat meant it could function indefinitely without cooling systems, maintenance shutdowns, or fuel replacement. It represented a quantum leap in energy technology that could transform human civilization overnight. Yet the reactor remained stubbornly mysterious despite intensive study. Every test they devised, every measurement they attempted, revealed new impossibilities that contradicted established physics. The device operated in ways that suggested the creators understood fundamental forces at levels human science hadn't even begun to approach. The element 115 fuel appeared to access zero-point energy or tap into dimensional forces that existed beyond current theoretical frameworks. The craft's three-level design integrated the reactor with navigation and propulsion systems in ways that defied conventional engineering logic. The upper level contained what appeared to be sensor arrays and navigation equipment, dark panels that could somehow determine the craft's position in space through unknown means. The main level housed the reactor and operator positions, while the lower level contained the gravity amplifiers that translated the reactor's energy into directed gravitational effects. Standing beside this impossible machine, Lazar realized he was witnessing technology that represented centuries or millennia of advancement beyond human capability. The element 115 reactor wasn't just an engine, it was a window into physics that operated under principles humanity had yet to discover. Every moment spent studying it revealed new layers of complexity that challenged not just engineering knowledge, but fundamental understanding of how the universe operated at its deepest levels. Distant trees line the horizon with dramatic evening clouds above. The lighting contrasts warmth on the field and a cool glow from the ship. Composition resembles a 1970s sci-fi film still, high detail, cinematic tones. The test flight schedule at S4 revealed a pattern that spoke to both the extraordinary nature of the technology and the extreme secrecy surrounding its study. Wednesdays were chosen deliberately because statistical analysis showed the lowest traffic volume on surrounding highways, minimizing the risk of civilian observation. Bob Lazar had acquired this schedule through his security clearance, understanding that these weren't casual demonstrations, but carefully orchestrated experiments with technology that could reshape humanity's understanding of physics and space travel. The gravitational manipulation system represented the most profound aspect of the extraterrestrial craft's design. Unlike conventional propulsion that relied on thrust and reaction mass, this vessel operated by warping the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The reactor's element 115 fuel generated gravitational waves that propagated through the craft's specialized waveguide system, emerging from the small appendage at the top to create what could only be described as a localized distortion in the fabric of reality. This distortion manifested as a heart-shaped gravitational field that enveloped the entire craft. Within this field, the normal rules of physics underwent dramatic alteration. Objects falling toward the craft would accelerate not toward Earth's gravitational center, but toward the craft itself. Light rays bent around the vessel's perimeter, creating an optical effect that made the craft nearly invisible when viewed from directly below. Radio waves, electromagnetic radiation, and even particle emissions curved around the gravitational envelope in ways that contradict every known principle of wave propagation. The implications were staggering. By manipulating gravity rather than fighting against it, the craft achieved capabilities that transcended the limitations of chemical or even nuclear propulsion. Traditional aircraft required enormous amounts of energy to overcome gravitational attraction, burning vast quantities of fuel to achieve relatively modest accelerations. This vessel simply altered its local gravitational environment, allowing it to accelerate instantaneously in any direction without regard for momentum conservation or G-force limitations that would prove fatal to biological occupants. 3 gravity amplifiers positioned on the craft's lower level provided directional control for these gravitational effects. Each amplifier could focus the heart-shaped field asymmetrically, creating gravitational gradients that pulled the craft towards specific coordinates in space. By varying the output of individual amplifiers, the craft could perform maneuvers impossible for conventional aircraft: instantaneous 90-degree turns, complete reversals of direction without deceleration, and acceleration profiles that would reduce human pilots to liquid under normal circumstances. 3 gravity amplifiers positioned on the craft's lower level provided directional control for these gravitational effects. Each amplifier could focus the heart-shaped field asymmetrically, creating gravitational gradients that pulled the craft towards specific coordinates in space. By varying the output of individual amplifiers, the craft could perform maneuvers impossible for conventional aircraft: instantaneous 90-degree turns, complete reversals of direction without deceleration, and acceleration profiles that would reduce human pilots to liquid under normal circumstances. The waveguide system that channeled gravitational waves from the reactor to the emission point represented engineering beyond human comprehension. Unlike electromagnetic waveguides that conduct radio or microwave energy through hollow metal tubes, this system somehow contained and directed gravitational waves, distortions in space-time itself, through solid matter without any apparent energy loss or field degradation. The waveguide maintained perfect efficiency across the entire spectrum of gravitational frequencies generated by the reactor. During the single test flight that Lazar witnessed, the craft demonstrated these principles in operation. The vessel lifted silently from its hangar position, producing only a faint blue corona discharge around its lower perimeter as it initially engaged its gravitational systems. This corona effect, similar to high-voltage brush discharge, indicated enormous electrical potentials involved in the gravity generation process, though the exact relationship between electromagnetic and gravitational effects remained unclear. As the craft cleared the ground by 5 to 10 feet, both the corona discharge and the accompanying hiss sound disappeared entirely. The vessel now operated within its own gravitational bubble, completely isolated from Earth's gravitational influence except as modified by its own field manipulation. Within this envelope, the craft could maneuver with perfect silence and efficiency, no longer subject to atmospheric drag, gravitational attraction, or momentum conservation as experienced by conventional aircraft. The communication paradox presented another fascinating aspect of the gravitational field technology. Conventional radio waves should have been unable to penetrate the craft's gravitational envelope, as the field distorted electromagnetic radiation just as dramatically as it affected light and other forms of energy. Yet the test controllers maintained clear radio contact with the craft's occupant throughout the demonstration, suggesting either breakthrough understanding of electromagnetic gravitational interaction or communication technology that operated through principles unknown to human science. The craft's ability to render itself optically invisible from below demonstrated practical applications of gravitational lensing on a localized scale. Einstein's general relativity predicted that massive objects would bend light around them, and astronomers had observed this effect around stars and galaxies. But creating artificial gravitational fields strong enough to bend light while remaining small enough for a 52-foot craft required energy densities and field manipulation capabilities that exceeded anything in human theoretical physics. Navigation systems integrated with the gravitational manipulation technology allowed the craft to determine its position in space through unknown means. The dark sensor panels distributed around the upper level of the craft apparently detected gravitational reference points or space-time distortions that provided positioning information without reliance on electromagnetic signals, celestial navigation, or inertial guidance systems. This suggested detection of gravitational anomalies at cosmic scales, possibly including the gravitational signatures of distant stellar objects or even galactic structures. The three-level architecture of the craft reflected the complexity of integrating gravitational field manipulation with navigation and control systems. The reactor and waveguide occupied the central core. The gravity amplifiers provided directional control from the lower level, and the navigation sensors maintained spatial awareness from the upper level. Each system operated in perfect coordination despite the absence of any visible interconnecting cables, control interfaces, or mechanical linkages between components. Field testing revealed that the gravitational manipulation system operated across multiple operational modes. Low-power operation allowed for silent hovering and gentle maneuvering, while high-performance tests conducted above the mountain ranges involved radical accelerations and direction changes that pushed the technology to its apparent limits. The craft could transition seamlessly between these modes without any observable reconfiguration or system adjustments, suggesting either fully automated control systems or interface technologies that responded directly to operator intentions. The energy requirements for creating artificial gravitational fields of such intensity remained completely opaque to conventional physics. Einstein's field equations suggested that significant space-time curvature required enormous mass-energy concentrations, yet this relatively small craft generated effects comparable to planetary-scale gravitational bodies. The element 115 reactor somehow accessed energy sources or dimensional effects that allowed such field generation without the mass energy requirements predicted by general relativity. Most significantly, the gravitational manipulation technology represented a fundamental paradigm shift in space travel concepts. Rather than accelerating through space against gravitational influences, the craft created its own gravitational reference frame and moved by adjusting its position within the broader gravitational landscape of the solar system and galaxy. This approach could theoretically allow faster-than-light travel by contracting space-time in front of the craft while expanding it behind, similar to theoretical Alcubierre drive concepts, but implemented through practical technology rather than exotic matter with negative energy density. The Wednesday evening test flight operations at S4 represented the culmination of months of reverse engineering effort, transforming theoretical understanding into practical demonstration of technology that challenged every assumption about aerospace capabilities. Bob Lazar stood beside his colleague Barry outside the underground hangar as Dennis Mariani, their military supervisor, emerged with an unusual invitation that would forever change Lazar's perspective on the extent of the program's achievements. The craft had already been positioned outside its subterranean housing when Lazar and Barry joined the observation team. Unlike the previous months spent studying individual components and theoretical systems, this demonstration would showcase the integrated technology in full operational mode. The vessel, bathed in the harsh illumination of portable floodlights, sat motionless on the desert floor while technicians completed final system checks through equipment that bore no resemblance to conventional aerospace ground support systems. Communication protocols for the test flight revealed the extraordinary nature of the operation. A test pilot occupied the cramped interior of the craft, necessarily positioned on the floor of the central chamber due to the vessel's design for much smaller occupants. The radio communication system operated on standard VHF frequencies, clearly visible on the frequency counter of the ground-based transceiver. Yet this should have been impossible, given the craft's gravitational field effects that bent electromagnetic radiation around its perimeter. The initial liftoff sequence demonstrated the craft's revolutionary propulsion approach in the most dramatic way possible. As power systems engaged, a faint blue corona discharge appeared around the craft's lower perimeter, creating a luminous ring that pulsed with electrical energy. This plasma effect, similar to high-voltage brush discharge phenomena, accompanied a subtle hissing sound that indicated the tremendous electrical potentials involved in generating the gravitational field that would lift the craft from Earth's surface. Within moments, the craft rose silently from its ground position, climbing to approximately 5 to 10 feet altitude before the corona discharge and accompanying sound effects disappeared entirely. The vessel now operated within its own artificially generated gravitational envelope, completely isolated from Earth's gravitational influence and atmospheric effects. The transition from powered liftoff to silent hovering marked the point where the craft's gravitational manipulation system achieved full operational status. Maneuvering demonstrations during the test flight showcased capabilities that transcended conventional aerospace limitations. The craft moved smoothly left and right without any visible attitude changes or the banking maneuvers required by traditional aircraft. These lateral movements occurred instantaneously, without acceleration delays or momentum effects that would characterize normal flight operations. The vessel simply altered its position in space by adjusting the asymmetrical focus of its gravitational field, effectively changing which direction constituted down relative to its local reference frame. The high-performance test flights conducted above the mountain ranges pushed these capabilities to their apparent limits. Unlike the gentle demonstration maneuvers witnessed by Lazar, these operations involved radical acceleration profiles and direction changes that would have been fatal to human occupants under normal gravitational conditions. The craft could reverse direction instantly, perform 90-degree turns without deceleration, and achieve acceleration rates that would reduce conventional pilots to liquid under standard physics. Security protocols surrounding the test flights reflected both the extraordinary value of the technology and the extreme concern about public disclosure. The Wednesday scheduling, based on traffic analysis, ensured minimal civilian observation opportunities, while the restricted airspace around the Nellis Air Force Base complex provided additional protection against accidental discovery. These measures proved insufficient to prevent occasional sightings by civilians traveling on nearby highways, leading to persistent UFO reports in the Aviation Week and Space Technology and other aviation publications. The test pilot's role in these operations raised profound questions about human adaptation to gravitational field manipulation technology. Operating within the craft's artificial gravitational envelope would have required adjustment to completely altered physics, where normal concepts of up, down, acceleration, and momentum no longer applied in conventional ways. The pilot's ability to maintain control and execute precise maneuvers suggested either extensive training in gravitational field navigation or interface technology that translated conventional control inputs into appropriate field adjustments. Ground support operations for the test flights utilized equipment and procedures that bore no resemblance to conventional aerospace operations. No visible fuel systems, hydraulic connections, or electrical ground power units served the craft before flight operations. The vessel appeared completely self-contained, requiring no external support systems beyond the communication links maintained with ground controllers throughout the test sequence. This independence from ground support infrastructure suggested power and life support systems with capabilities far exceeding human technology. The craft's radar and optical invisibility characteristics became apparent during the test operations. Despite the clear visibility of the vessel to ground observers, the craft would have been undetectable to conventional radar systems due to its gravitational field's effect on electromagnetic radiation. Radar pulses would have bent around the craft's gravitational envelope just as light rays curved around its perimeter when viewed from below, creating a stealth capability that operated through space-time distortion rather than radar-absorbing materials or geometric shaping. Flight envelope testing revealed operational parameters that suggested interplanetary or even interstellar capabilities. While the demonstrations observed by Lazar involved relatively conservative maneuvers within Earth's atmosphere, the craft's gravitational manipulation system theoretically allowed for acceleration profiles and velocity achievements limited only by the strength of the artificial gravitational fields it could generate. The Element 115 reactor's energy output appeared sufficient to sustain field strengths capable of achieving significant fractions of light speed through space-time contraction effects. Navigation system demonstrations during the test flights indicated positioning and guidance capabilities that operated independently of terrestrial reference systems. The craft's sensor arrays, distributed around its upper level, apparently detected gravitational reference points or space-time distortions that provided positioning information without reliance on GPS, inertial navigation, or celestial positioning systems. This suggested detection capabilities for gravitational anomalies at cosmic scales, possibly including the signatures of distant stellar objects or galactic gravitational structures. The integration of multiple technological systems during flight operations revealed the sophisticated coordination required for gravitational field manipulation. The reactor's Element 115 fuel provided the energy source, the waveguide system directed gravitational waves to the emission point, the 3 gravity amplifiers provided directional control, and the navigation sensors maintained spatial awareness. All these systems operated in perfect synchronization without any visible control interfaces or mechanical interconnections between components. Post-flight analysis opportunities remained limited due to the compartmentalized nature of the reverse engineering program. Lazar and Barry could observe the demonstrations and discuss theoretical implications, but they had no access to flight data, pilot debriefings, or operational parameters recorded during the test sequences. This restriction prevented the comprehensive analysis that would have accelerated understanding of the technology's full capabilities and operational limitations. The psychological impact of witnessing technology that operated beyond known physics created a profound shift in perspective for everyone involved in the program. The test flights provided undeniable evidence that the craft's capabilities weren't theoretical or speculative, but represented practical engineering solutions to problems that human science hadn't even begun to address. The vessels demonstrated controlled flight characteristics that proved their extraterrestrial origin beyond any reasonable doubt. Most significantly, the test flight operations represented humanity's first steps towards understanding and potentially replicating technology that could transform space exploration and transportation. The careful study of operational parameters, flight characteristics, and system integration provided the foundation for eventually developing human versions of gravitational manipulation technology. Though such development would require breakthrough advances in fundamental physics and engineering capabilities